everybody. Welcome to the community and the conversation today. This is kind of coming to you in the middle of farming season, crazy farming season. But I was helping my husband and I had this thought. God just laid this on my heart. And so I am in between things with him, but I wanted to come in and record this episode really quick because when God speaks and he really says something that I feel is impactful to my life and it is a good reminder for me, I always feel like that's applicable for somebody else. And so I hope this message is applicable for you, just like all the messages. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning into the conversation. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Just keep growing the community. I am so grateful for all of you and everything that we're getting to do. And I'm just super, super excited. So, like I said, share, subscribe, just keep growing it, right? Women need other women. I know that. I used to not think that. And now in my 40s, I'm like, oh yeah, women need other women. So today, though, what I want to talk to you about is changing of seasons. And sometimes those changes of seasons come and they're beautiful and they're graceful, and you're like, look at me grow. And sometimes they are hard and painful, and we don't love it. We don't love it when that happens. But my husband and I, we've been working on getting ready for spring here on the farm, and it requires a ton of work. And most people, myself included, when we think of spring, we think of sunshine and blue skies and beautiful flowers starting to bloom and babies, right? Like we have baby calves. And we just think it's like the time of growth, of rebirth, right? And we love that. I love that. That is something about spring that I really enjoy. Um, but what my husband and I have been doing the last couple of days in preparation for the new growth has been tearing stuff up. It's been burning things. It's been doing some stuff that's really hard, that looks not so great, but those are things that are required before the new growth can happen. So I think that is sometimes so applicable in our life, right? Like we want growth in our life. I want growth in my life. That is something that I am super, super committed to in this season. It is something that I am super passionate about is women understanding that we can be wives and moms and do all the things, but we can still be women who know our identity and know our value and know our worth outside of just being a wife and a mom. And I love that. And I love growth and when it happens, right? And spring, when we see that growth, is just, it's such a beautiful reminder of that the seasons happen and there's growth in some seasons. And that growth is beautiful and we love that, right? Like I love spring for those reasons. I love to see all the dead and the brown that's been here this winter if start to turn green. But it doesn't just turn green without some work. It doesn't just turn green because it can. It turns green, especially on our farm, because my husband and my kids and I spend hours helping and preparing for the green to come. And I think that's true whether you have a beautiful flower bed and a yard, whether you have a farm like we have, or whether you walk by a city park every day in the spring and you get to admire the beautiful green grass and the beautiful flowers, or the vegetable garden that you grow on your patio. It takes work before that green and that new growth shows up. So in farming, we have what we are lovingly in the tillage season, which is where we take all the growth that from last year's crops that are still left in the field. We call it stubble. And it's just the remnants. It's the remnants of what's left from last year's fall's crops. And we cannot come in and plant new crops if the ground is still covered in weeds and it's still covered in stubble and it's hard and it's not soft and it's not soft. It cannot grow new growth in the hard and the weeds and the stubble. So we have to come in, my husband comes in and we plow. We turn the old dirt that's on top and the new soft brown beautiful black dirt that's underneath, we flip it. We tear out the top and it goes underneath and the new ground comes to the top. And it takes time and it tears it up. If the ground has clods and it has big chunks of dirt that are like dirt clods, big chunks of dirt that are stuck together. And it's rough and it's slow and it's not the prettiest part of farming. Like there's no green, but it is clearing the way for new growth to occur. And it is vital. It is a vital step to the process. If we do not turn up the ground and we do not tear out the stubble and we do not tear out the weeds, nothing new will grow. Something else that we've been working on besides the plowing is we've been doing a lot of burning of our ditches. So ditches is how we transport water to water our crops. And they get covered in the winter with tumbleweeds that blow and dead grass and dead weeds. And what that does is it just slows the water down. It slows the moving of the water. And so then it plugs up your ditches and it plugs up your tubes and it keeps the water from getting to where it needs to go. So we actually have to come in and burn, scorch all of those ditches to get them clean. And I talk about this today because I think that sometimes we forget and we don't realize that the hard comes before the new growth. That we just want new growth to occur. We just want the blooms. We just want the green. We just want the pretty to show up in our life. But it takes so much work to get there. There is a solid month for my husband in the tillage season. And it's a process. It is a process to plow the field, to turn the dirt over. Then he's got to come in and he chisels it, which breaks up the big clods. Then he goes back over that same dirt again with a disc, maybe more than once, probably more than once. Then he comes in with the land plane and it smooths it out so the ground is all smooth and flat. Then we have to come in and we have to plant the seeds. And then we come in and we make furrows so we're able to water those seeds. And then, and only then, does new growth start to occur. It takes steps and so many processes to get to that new growth, to get to that point. It's the same with burning the ditches. If you don't burn the ditches as part of your preparation for new growth, water doesn't get there. The seeds can't get the water that they need and they can't grow. If you don't do all the proper tillage steps, the ground stays hard. The trash from the previous year, the stubble, the weeds, the dead grass, the tumbleweeds that have blown, keep the new seeds from growing. So yes, spring is this beautiful time of growth. But before the new growth occurs, we have to go through the hard pieces of it, the getting the ground ready. And I feel like that is so applicable to our hearts, right? Like so many of us want to grow and we want to be better women. We want to be better for ourselves. We want to be better wives. We want to be better spouses. We want to be better friends. We want to be better mamas. And our heart is so good to do all of those pieces. But sometimes when we haven't cleared out the stubble and we haven't burnt the ditches so the water can get there, and we haven't plowed up the ground, and we haven't disked and land planed and done all the pieces so that new growth can occur in our heart is not soft and new growth can't occur. We can still put the seeds in. We can do all those pieces to the ground, but new growth will not happen. And it's the same thing in our hearts. It's the same thing in our life. If we don't stop and address the old stubble in our hearts and the old dead grass as a metaphor in our hearts and in our lives, and we just keep putting more seeds on the ground and put more seeds on the ground, but we're not giving them a chance to grow. So sometimes we have to stop and do the hard pieces of really examining our own lives, and not examining and where we blame other people for our heart and it's their fault. And if they would just do, and if my kids would not do this, or if my husband would do this, or if my husband wouldn't do this, or if my kids would or would not do this, or my boss or my coworker, we cannot blame them for our situations. We cannot blame them and say it's their fault. We've been working so hard on the ownership pieces of our life. And is the heart there? Yeah. Yeah, it's there. And it might be there from situations from years of not tending to the hard ground in your heart. But we get this beautiful opportunity at any time to say, you know what? I don't I don't want that anymore. I don't want to live with my heart being hardened and planting beautiful seeds to grow flowers on ground that's not ready, on a heart that's not ready to grow. And sometimes we have to process through the yuck and the muck and the hard, stale ground in our hearts. That was such a key piece for me when I started growing and I started really examining my life, and God and I started doing a ton of work. Was it really came down to I had to process the anger and the hurt and the frustration that I felt. I had to tear up the ground. I had to come in and just like we burn the weeds and we burn the old and we tear up the ground in the fields, I had to do the similar things to my heart. I had to I had to really examine my heart, and I had to take ownership for where it was at and how it was feeling, because that was nobody else's responsibility but my own. And there's a process that I use, and I talk about it in my book in a lot of great detail. Um, it's called the lamenting process. And it is simply just, you know me, my pen is my sword. So it is journaling the hard and the yuck and the stuff that you don't love. And whether that's your situation at work, your situation at home, your kids that are hard, your friends, your relationship with your mother-in-law or your own mother. If you journal the hard and you just lament, you wail, you just say, I just can't, right? They just can't grow anything in this heart because it needs to be soft. And I have to get rid of the stuff that doesn't belong there anymore. When we get to that point, and we don't blame others for it, and we don't expect somebody else to come in and fix it, and we don't continue to just dump new seeds on hoping for new growth. When we really stop And we know our identity is not in what everybody thinks of us, and our worth is coming from God. And when we can stop and really say, okay, we're gonna do the work, the hard work, and we're going to take this ground that has weeds and thorns and is hard and not able to grow new growth. We're going to tear it up. We're going to work on it. We're going to soften it up. So when God starts planting those new seeds in, and you start planting new growth into your life, and you start implementing these beautiful habits we are creating, they grow and they flourish and they can grow deep roots because your heart is soft. It's capable of being able to grow new growth. We can't grow new growth if we don't do the hard work. If we don't stop and say, I'm not going to keep dumping seeds. I'm not going to keep layering over the weeds. I'm going to address them. I'm going to own them. And I'm going to bring them to God. And He and I are going to deal with them. And it's hard and it's yucky because nobody wants to do that work. It's the stuff that's not fun. Everybody loves to see the beautiful spring flowers and the beautiful green grass. Everybody loves to walk by those yards that you see in your neighborhood that are just beautiful with flowers and green grass, and they're just exceptionally perfect, right? They're just beautiful. And the fields that you drive by with the crops, where the crops are green and growing and producing food for the nation. Everybody loves to see that piece of it. But it takes the work before you get to see the blooms, before you get to see the growth, before you get to see the green and the colors and the blossoms. We can't be afraid to do the hard work, ladies. We can't be afraid to push in and say, I'm going to have to take ownership and address these things. So I'm going to really encourage you, ladies, if you're feeling like your heart is hard and you're having a hard time growing, if you feel like the season is continuing to just wage on and you want new growth, but you just can't get to there, I'm going to encourage you to examine your heart. And it's okay. This is the thing. It is okay if your heart is not where you want it to be. It's okay. It is okay to say, I am struggling and my heart is hard and I need to work on that. It's okay. We live in a society, and we've talked about this, where it's everybody sees everybody's perfect and nobody addresses the hard. Nobody talks about the hard. It's all photoshopped perfect and social media comparative awesome. But that's not real life. That's not real life at all. It's not my real life. Real life is hard and yucky and messy, and we know that. And there's no shame at all. In fact, I think one of the biggest things of strength, one of the biggest moments of strength in this journey for me was when I just knew I just couldn't. I had to address. I had to address my heart condition. I had to take ownership of that. And lamenting was the best process for me. So wail it to God, wail it, write it in a journal, wail it to God. Tell him your hurts, your frustration, your anger, your bitterness, all the things in your heart that you don't love, but that are there. Don't cover them up. Tell God. He's big enough for it. He wants you to tell him. And then rest in knowing that he's going to help soften that heart. He's going to help the seeds of growth that you plant grow. He's going to help those blooms that we love to see in the spring grow. and turn into these most beautiful flowers and these beautiful gardens that we are just so excited about, that we want to see. We just can't be afraid to do all the hard work to get there. Beautiful flowers don't grow on concrete. They grow in dirt and in hearts that has been softened and has been nourished and taken care of. It's a harder conversation this week, ladies. But I was standing there with my husband burning ditches and helping him fix the plow, and I just thought I have to share. I have to share because going through the hard is what brings us to the new growth. And there's no shame in the hard. I've walked through it, and I'm sure there'll be more seasons of it. But the hard, if we allow God to work, will bring growth, new growth. And that, ladies, is beautiful and amazing. Like always, I am in your corner and I am on your side. And I am so grateful for each one of you. Have a great week.